My name is Kwabena Chenchen. Many thanks for joining us here on News Desk. To our very first story, the Zion government's penchant to give in to demands by agitating labor groups has been a source of disquiet for the Employment and Labor Relations Minister. Haruna Idrisu voiced out his frustration on Tuesday at the inauguration of a new board for the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. The minister, however, believes the new board has a significant role to play in averting most of the labor agitations and urged them to take up the challenge.
It was President Mahama whose vow in March last year not to succumb to the many labor agitations in election years brought about the famous dead goat syndrome analogy. The comments by his Employment and Labor Relations Minister, however, suggest the administration hasn't quite handled that resolve to his satisfaction. Strange as it may sound, the minister, who would typically sign off the agreements to end the agitations, had his own complaints.
There appears to be a growing trend that I must express a personal disquiet about. The tendency where workers threaten strike or embark on strike, and the immediate response from government sources is get what you want. We are giving you this amount or that amount, or we are engaging you for this purpose because you are on a strike action. By that single act, we are giving an incentive for people to continue to strike even when they have no basis.
He is, however, hopeful the 7-member board mandated to deal with labor agitations would help out.
Therefore, let me task and charge this board to be proactive and preemptive in order that we can avoid many of the instances where the industrial peace and harmony of this country is disturbed, largely by a clear lack of understanding sometimes of the law, sometimes of the process, and sometimes in managing the particular grievances that are concerned. And also, as you are aware, to manage the single spine pay policy. And again, the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, a very important commission of government because you are largely responsible for public service pay policy.
Chairman of the board, W.K. Kemevo, pledged that labor agitations and demonstrations may well be a thing of the past because his board would implement the single spine salary structure to the letter.
I pledge to support and cooperate with the Honorable Minister, the management and staff of the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, and other key stakeholders to develop comprehensive strategies to proactively respond to the issues and challenges arising from the implementation of the single spine pay policy and other related matters, and thereby reduce to the barest minimum the tendency to do firefighting, as it were.
Haruna Idrisu further tasked the new board to ensure high productivity in the public sector commensurate with the salary being paid to public officers.
Well, now, a former special representative of the UN Secretary General and the coordinator of UN operations in Liberia has asked Ghana to build resilient institutions to prevent conflicts and violence as the country prepares for the November 7 polls. Karen Landgreen says people can only act orderly when they believe in institutions that have been set up to address their grievances. She spoke with Beatrice Edu after addressing the 4th Kofi Annan Dag Hammarskjöld Code annual lecture at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Center.
Resilient institutions are really at the core of stable societies, and too often we are under such enormous pressure as the UN and partners, especially in peacekeeping, to go in quickly and get out quickly. But rebuilding a society is not a technical fix, and for many years, typically after conflict, those societies remain fragile. So these big UN reviews from last year recognize that it's an ongoing process of addressing fragility, building inclusive societies, and these stable institutions. So one of the very big challenges we are now faced with is for the United Nations and for all partners to be singing from the same song sheet, to have a shared analysis of what needs to be done to help countries stabilize and become less fragile, and then to implement it in concert. Africa is extraordinarily fortunate in having the regional and sub-regional bodies it does. From the AU, whose role and capacity have increased tremendously in the past decade, to ECOWAS, to the East African Community, where I served before in Burundi. And of course, ECOWAS has an extraordinary history with Liberia. The role of ECOWAS in Liberia changed Liberia, and it changed ECOWAS. So we see the possibility for ECOWAS to be even more than it is today, to focus on what it is among its member states that will help keep them stable, what needs to be reinforced. And when we look at cross-border threats today, we have to acknowledge there are serious cross-border threats which countries are facing, from trafficking to terrorism. The ECOWAS member states really have an opportunity to use their membership to focus on these threats as well.
Well, in an interview with Joy News, a former UN Senior Governance Advisor, Professor Akufo-Addo, also warned mass joblessness among the youth in Ghana could breed terrorist groups in the country.
Somebody was asking about evidence-based. You take your car and drive on the main streets of Accra, and you see troops filing all over the place, either begging or selling all kinds of items. It's a strong indication that our young people do not have jobs to do. But more importantly, if you take a survey of young people who have graduated from our universities over the past 3-4 years, you'll be amazed to find that a sizable majority do not have jobs. Most of them are staying home. I have people like that who come to me all the time. So when young people get restless because they are not being engaged, you can imagine the kinds of things they will begin to imagine for themselves and for their communities and for the country. So there's also a danger that any country that's unable to provide opportunities for its people to be engaged, you are most likely to find such people getting involved in all kinds of anti-social activities, including criminal activities, and at the very extreme, terrorism.
Is the situation that bad in Ghana? I mean, looking at all the security alerts that we've received recently, would you say that the situation is so bad people could easily just fall into the hands of any of these terrorists?
I wouldn't say the situation is that bad. I mean, it's bad, but not very, very bad. And I think by and large, the communities, the society, the government as a whole, we are making efforts to engage these young people. But because our economy in terms of industries have been shrinking, job opportunities that are normally created by the private sector are not there. And the government is not in a position to employ everybody. So therefore, I think the government should create an environment that will enable the private sector to expand, because the more they expand, of course, the more hands they will need in the expansion, and that is what employment is all about. So we need to shift focus away from government creating jobs. That's part of our economic difficulties, to really allow the private sector to create the jobs.
So you're talking about entrepreneurship?
Of course, entrepreneurship, industries, manufacturing, all kinds of things that are going on, that from reports. Some of them beginning to close down because of either overtaxation or inability to access credit. In other words, there should be a framework, a policy framework that will incentivize the private sector to expand and to employ.
Finally, from me, quite recently, the Vice President, when he addressed the university students from the University of Professional Studies, he talked about, or he encouraged them, that instead of coming out of school and looking for jobs, they should create those jobs. And you've just spoken about the need to create the environment. Apart from the taxation bit and then the difficulty in accessing credit, what else could be done by government to ensure that the needed environment is there for such, adventures?
It's quite easier for you to say graduates should create jobs. When they go to school for 4 years and are not taught how to create jobs, they cannot leave the universities and come and create jobs. It's not possible. So if you want them to create jobs, make sure your educational institutions are preparing them with the skills that are needed to create the jobs. I don't think that's what we're seeing in our institutions. Maybe with this new idea of converting polytechnics into technical universities, maybe these are the institutions that are going to provide the skills and the talent, the knowledge for them to create jobs.
Well, let's now talk about the trending issue of the day. And the Bureau of National Investigations has released Nana Addo's photographer and bodyguard after detaining them for several hours. The two, Kojo Treme and Malik Nikwe, were released late last night from the Bureau. They had been detained for refusing to complete personality profile forms at the Bureau. They were to serve as witnesses for Captain Koda, who was at the BNI office to retrieve his personal items after his detention there some weeks ago. Well, the MPP, we are told, has released a statement on this very issue. We'll be speaking to them in a while, but let's now bring you extracts of that very statement, and my colleague Fred Smith is joining me now in studio with details of that very statement. Fred, many thanks for joining us. So what is the NPP saying in this statement?
Well, the statement basically gives the facts of what happened at the BNI headquarters, Greater Accra headquarters yesterday, and it says that the personal photographer and bodyguard of the 2016 presidential candidate of the New Patriotic Party, where this evening it was issued last night. So they were detained by the Bureau of National Investigations for complying with the orders of their lawyers not to sign personality profile forms presented to them by officers of the BNI. The pair, Kojo Treme and Malik Nikwe, had accompanied Captain Koda. I know Captain Koda is head of security for Nana Akufo-Addo, and he accompanied the two to the BNI offices, where items taken from the residence of Captain Koda were to be returned to him. Indeed, at the time the items were taken from Captain Koda's residence, the two gentlemen served as witnesses, so they were present. However, some 2 weeks ago, the BNI indicated to Captain Koda that the items taken from his residence were to be returned to him on condition that he brought along two witnesses who were present when the items were taken. Upon arrival at the BNI office, the two were asked to fill out personality profile forms reserved for the suspects, after which the items will be released. The two indicated to the BNI officers that they would have to consult their lawyers, since they were only present merely to witness the return of the items taken by the BNI. After consultation with their lawyer, Nana Asante Bedieto, who we understand is out of town now, they were advised not to fill out the personality profile forms, but should only witness through the provision of their names and signature on the document containing the list of the items that were to be returned. Kojo Treme and Malik Nikwe, these are the two, returning to the offices of the BNI this afternoon, referring to yesterday afternoon, together with Captain Koda, told the officers of the BNI the advice of their lawyers, which was explicitly not to fill the personality profile forms. The BNI officials, acting on orders from above, and orders from above in quotes, then detained the two gentlemen for their refusal to fill their forms and proceeded to ask Captain Koda to leave the offices of the BNI. These are the details in the statement released last night by the NPP, but we've also been speaking to Captain Koda himself, who says that they arrived there at 3 p.m. to go through the formalities of collecting the items. They left the facility at 11:30 p.m. 11:30
p.m.
Exactly.
So as things stand now, they have been released?
They have been released. They were released late last night, 11:30, Captain Koda.
But there was no reason given for their continuous detention over there?
Well, according to Captain Koda, he says when the forms were presented to the two gentlemen, they were asked to fill out, but on top of that form, they saw that there's inscription that suspects, and they didn't understand it. Okay. So It's the reason why they consulted their lawyers, and they were advised not to sign it because of that inscription there. And so they were asked to wait. They sat for a very long time, and then sometime around 5 p.m. they came and said, asked whether they had changed their mind about filling the forms. They said, no, that's our lawyers' instructions are that we should not fill that form. And so they continued to be there. I think it was at that point that they told them that there's some order from above, and that Captain Koda could go home.
So now they are home.
They are home.
They are out of custody. Yes. Okay. Well, many thanks for that update, Fred Smith. And that was Fred Smith, my colleague, bringing us extracts of that very statement, plus the latest, because he has been speaking to Captain Koda and a few others as far as this very issue is concerned. Let's still stay with the NPP and now go onto the phone lines and speak to Michael Kwe Jr. He happens to be a Deputy Communications Director for the party, and he's joining us now over the phone lines. Mr. Kwe, good morning. Many thanks for your time here on News, sir.
Yes, very good morning to yourself and to your listeners.
Right. So, does this in any way affirm the party's suspicions that perhaps the BNI is being used as a tool just to intimidate the NPP?
Well, let me start by saying that yesterday's events were most unfortunate. The reason simply is when anyone goes to a police station, and let's assume the BNI office is also a police station, which it should be under the circumstances, to act as a witness or as an informant. In fact, you can actually say you don't want to say anything. And what they will tell you is that, okay, you are free to go until we have any further things to ask you, or you're free to go pending further investigation. I am totally shocked that a photographer of Nana Akufo-Addo and a security person called Malik, Mr. Chairman and Malik, would go to the BNI on the invitation of the BNI to come and sign as a witness for Captain Koda's goods. Captain Koda's goods were seized on the premise that Captain Koda had done something illegal. We all know that that South African story didn't wash, and eventually the people had to be deported without any charges or without any guilt. That was done by the BNI. We also know that the BNI detained these South Africans against a court order, illegal behavior. Then this same BNI, after taking Captain Koda's goods from his house, what had to happen was that they have to sign so that the BNI realize has done nothing illegal. They say, come for your goods. But so that you also don't say that A, B, C, D has not been given to me, but A, B, C instead. Bring those same witnesses so that they will sign as witnesses that you got your things back. Why do they have to fill the profile form, which is for suspects? People who are going to be charged with an offense. Why were they detained against their will? Even for 20 minutes is a criminal offense.
Okay.
Let alone for hours.
So leading to the question I asked earlier, whether or not this very action lends credence to the many things we've heard the NPP say that seem to suggest that you believe that the BNI is at this point in time being used as a tool to intimidate yourself, I mean the NPP, ahead of the elections. Not
in that description. We are saying that the BNI, under the watch of President Mahama, is being used as a tool to intimidate Ghanaians. The man who was arrested, the owner of the Marbles company, I don't know if he's an NPP
Marbles
member.
and Granites, yeah, Dr.
Yes.
Eniayo.
The South Africans, they are not NPP members. The other NPP members who have been arrested by the BNI are also Ghanaians. Our point is that under the watch of President Mahama, there seems to be a certain pattern by the BNI not to respect the rule of law. And we know who appoints the head of BNI. We know that the head of national security has come out in an open statement to the media to say he ordered the arrest of the owner of the Marble and Granite Company, which is against the law. You cannot arrest anyone unless they are in suspicion of committing a crime or in the process or have committed a crime. So under what category did these people fall into? The photographer and the security man. Were they suspects? Have they committed a crime? Are they about to commit a crime? Why were they arrested by the BNI? And by John Mahama not sacking the head of the BNI after all these rule of law blunders is either in support of his actions, or as we say in the local parlance, meaning that if you sit on the sideline and let people chew python meat and you are watching them chew it, you are part of those chewing the python. So we are saying that we want to know from President John Mahama that he must either sack the head of BNI for this constant abuse of Ghanaians, or we are supposed to think that he is part of those orders from above that are given to harass Ghanaians, including NPP people.
Well, as things stand now, we are unable to substantiate whether or not indeed this was an order from above. But still speaking,
it doesn't matter whether you can substantiate whether it's an order from above, because let me just add this. No, hold on. Because the people there said, when they arrested them, they asked them, who said you should arrest us? They said order from above. And my brother, I was the one who dealt with the Nana Dankwa case. When Nana Dankwa was rearrested, and we asked them, who said you should rearrest him? They said order from above. I'm sure as a journalist, you are very familiar with that term. And we are saying that who is that person above? If it is not President John Mahama himself behind these orders from above, then he must take an action from above and sack the head of.
So in other words, you are accusing the president of being behind these things. I mean, what is he to gain anyway?
I don't know what he is to gain. But all I know is that it's happening under the president's watch. Look, the president is the one who appoints the head of BNI. We are saying that the BNI director even flouted a court order to give people bail. If you cannot sack him for that, what else can he be sacked for? Remember, if the BNI does anything creditable, it goes to the president. And if they do anything which is discreditable, the head of BNI must be sacked, so that it shows that this is the president who is upset with the way they are abusing the law. His silence on this matter would therefore show that there's an issue to be looked at.
So you want the head of BNI sacked? Aside that, what else? Because clearly it doesn't look like that may be happening anytime soon.
Yes, yesterday before 12 o'clock midnight, the head of BNI should have been sacked. Look, we cannot live in a state where our fathers fought for constitutional rule, Nana Akufo-Addo and others. And today we have the constitutional rule, and you abuse the constitution with impunity. We are not going to sit there and say nothing. We are going to fight it, and we are going to let the head of BNI know that his behavior is unacceptable. He is not above the law. He's paid by taxpayers' money. He operates with taxpayers' money. He must obey and go according to the Constitution. Otherwise, he must be sacked now.
Okay. Earlier, your party, I know Mr. Koda, for instance, had issues with the process he had to endure, what he had to go through at the time of his arrest and detention and all. And we even heard that he was even considering fighting this very issue in court, suing the BNI. With this very issue, adding on to that very list, is the MPP, for instance, looking at heading to the courts to get the BNI to really put a BNI in its proper place.
In all honesty, it would be unfair to speak for the lawyers of these gentlemen. But I must say that in a private conversation with him, he intimated that this was going to be done. But I would tell you that if these various people don't sue the BNI, I myself will lead a suit to sue the BNI on their behalf. Right. Because the BNI are not above the law. They cannot do what they want. What we want to ask is simple. Under what law did the BNI arrest them? What law did they break? What criminal code did they break? Not to sign a form is equal to an offense of detention. I mean, I can't believe this. And I'm very, very appalled that this will go on in the country and some people want to make it party politics. But just like the PDA, which started with politicians and people were excited, very soon people's girlfriends were being arrested just because somebody else liked her and he doesn't like her. They go and tell a lie about that person. This kind of behavior cannot continue in Ghana. And I think it is a national disgrace. It is an international disgrace. And this should never happen again. It's beginning to look as if you are associated in any way also to Nana Akufo-Addo, or there are some pictures that have been taken which goes against the president and so on, the head of national security can order for your arrest. We want them to know in no uncertain terms, we are not afraid of any BNI head. We are not afraid of the head of national security. They can't arrest us all. They can't kill us all. This is a very shameful behavior, and it should never happen again.
Mr. Quay, many thanks for your time here on News Desk this morning. And Michael Quay Jr. is the Deputy Communications Director for the opposition New Patriotic Party, saying that if even the party or the two persons who were detained by the BNI do not seek legal redress, he will personally take up this issue and head to the courts. We'll be keeping a close eye on that and we'll bring you a lot more reactions on this very issue. But time now for us to take a break here on News Desk. But remember, when we come back, we're going to have that very conversation about student politics and the role these major political parties in the country are now seemingly playing in these student politics. Details after this break. Stay with us.